Wondering what's next in your business or personal life? Welcome to Success to Significance, Life After Breaking Through Glass Ceilings, a podcast dedicated to helping you with all of life's challenges, discoveries, and opportunities. Whether you're seeking a new career, retirement, or simply wanting to make an impact in your community or the world. Join Jen Duplessis and her guests as they explore how to start, what to do when you're in the thick of a change or growth, and how to leave a mark in this world after breaking through your next achievement. You are moments away from the aha you've been seeking.
Well, welcome everyone to the podcast. I'm your host, Lady Jen Duplessis, as you know, and with me today is Lori McDowell. Welcome, Lori.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Well, I'm happy to have you here as well. So let me tell everyone just a little bit about you, but we like to explore more about you just to, in our way of doing it, more out of curiosity. But, number one is you had a TEDx talk called A Simple Shift to Reinvent Your Reality. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And you are an award-winning author of the Reinvention Mindset, which if you're watching, you can see right behind Lori on her over her left shoulder. Started off as an engineer that you and I both talk about, a chemical engineer, and how, I want to talk about that here in just a minute. But what you do is you help high achieving women break through their limiting beliefs and redefine success, infusing purpose, which we're going to talk about here as well today. So again, Lori, welcome. I know we'll find out more about you as we go through, some of my curiosity and questions, but I want to start off with, how does a chemical engineer move into the space of mindset transformation and infusing purpose and joy and fulfillment in lives? How does that happen?
Yeah, it is a little bit different. And I think part of it is my whole life as an engineer, I had been a bit of an anomaly. I was never the engineer that was really focused, on the data. I was the engineer that was social. So I've always been a social engineer compared to most engineers.
Yeah.
Yet what happened, it actually was the shift was a rather abrupt change because I was working as a chemical engineer and I had a job and I enjoyed my job. And then my boss retired and they brought in someone else who we didn't have the same values. We didn't have the same vision for the company. And there was just no room for both of us. And he decided that I had to go. He actually crazily had me come to a meeting 4 hours away from my house where I was supposed to speak. And when I got there, fired me, which was a little crazy, and told me to go home. So, who does that?
Yeah, I know. You know what? I call that something similar happened to me, but I wasn't asked to leave. But I call it, I didn't leave my company left me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was what I needed, because had it not been that way, had they just, told me it wasn't working and given me a severance package, I probably would have found another job and stayed a chemical engineer.
Yeah, it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Yeah.
I love that you said you're a social chemical engineer, and I hope you can remember that, because I think that add that to your bio. But I love that, because I always, my degree is in architecture. You and I talked about this, construction engineering, right? Mm-hmm. Architectural design and construction engineering. And my problem was I didn't want to talk to paper. I wanted to talk to people.
Yeah.
And it was, it's the same thing. And people look at me and they're like, you were an engineer. And I go, I know, because I like to talk to people. So you made this transition, but it obviously was not a transition. You're driving back for 4 hours and I'm visualizing you being angry and having some white knuckle and then crying maybe, and, dumbfounded. And then what happened?
Yeah, it was a crazy first couple hours of the drive where, I went just cycled through all the emotions from anger to fear to confusion. And then all of a sudden, I guess the thought popped into my head that I don't have to go to work tomorrow. And it was like I felt like the angels sang to me. And it was just so clear that I was meant to do more than work for a corporate company, making them a lot of money, and that this was my opportunity to change my life and to find my purpose and to do something different, and that I was never again going to put my joy, my satisfaction, my fulfillment in a company's hands. I was going to take that on my own.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful. So, I want to talk about that for a minute for selfish reasons. uh, so as we're recording this, something very similar happened to my daughter last week. She, was on a phone call. She had just the week before, they were talking about promoting her and expanding her, whatever. And they put her on a phone call at 9 o'clock at night. She's got a 2-year-old, and proceeded to tell them that they were letting her go because they didn't think they were getting out of her what they thought. And it's like, wait a minute, last week. So, I'm actually thinking, and listen, if you're listening to this, you're kind of going, hey, these kind of things happen to me, and she said, I mean, am I that bad? Am I that horrible? And I said, honey, a week ago, they were going to do something different. I think this is a financial decision. I think that if they laid you off, they'd have to pay unemployment. And if they fired you, they wouldn't. So they let you go is their word that they used. And she's struggling with trying to find another job. And I'm saying, hold on, hang 10 here. This is a sign that you're not looking at. So how do people that have had these situations happen, and even if it was by choice, right, that you chose to leave something and say, I don't know what's next, but I can't do this. How do you read the signs, and how do you really come up with what you did is like, wait a minute, this is a good thing. And what were the next steps that you took? What are next steps that people could take in saying, do I go to the job in the security, or how do I find, because this is what you do, you redefine success and infuse the purpose of people, right? How do I know if that's a right decision?
Right. Yeah. The first thing is, excuse me, when you get fired, we always think it's about us. And it's really not about us. It's about them. And you have to start thinking about that. It's like, I'm great. I did a good job. I know I'm amazing. It didn't work for me to match with them. So if I got fired, it's about them. And I know the first time I talked about it on a podcast, I was terrified. Like I was going to tell the world I got fired. I was embarrassed. I was like, how can I admit that? Because we have so much, we have this shame and this like, oh, we're not worthy because we got fired. And it's really not like that. I mean, it's like it's a relationship, and sometimes it just doesn't work through no fault of anyone else. And when you start thinking like that and you're not blaming yourself, that does help kind of open up, okay, what's next? And I think rather than rush into something, it's really important to start the process of like self-exploration, discovering what it is about you that what lights you up. Making sure often when we get fired, we're finding that our values and our job don't necessarily match up. And that's why we got fired. I mean, I know that happened in my company because they suddenly had these different set of values. And even though I wasn't trying to get fired, I think I was doing a little bit of self-sabotage because I didn't like the way they were going.
Yeah, there's an undertone, right? There's an underlying piece of it. It's funny. I want to talk about my daughter for a second because see, someone who's listening can hear this and say, oh, yeah, that was me too. She sat here at my house and said, it was kind of weird because they weren't calling me back all of a sudden. And there was this, and, he said something off kilter. That was all right there in front of you. Just like you're saying.
Yeah, you see the signs and you kind of ignore them, and sometimes you need that push to really make the change that deep down inside you knew you should be making, you knew you wanted to make.
Yeah.
So before jumping into another job, I would just say, look at your values, look at what you're excited about, look at what lights you up, what's your why, and then make sure that whatever you go to is aligned with that, and maybe it is another job. There might be jobs in the corporate world that are more aligned with your values, because there are definitely people who work in corporate their whole life and love it, and they're fulfilled and they're excited. And maybe it's something else, but the key, I think, is really that you're in charge of it. You make the decisions, you decide what you're going to do, where you're going to go. And even if you do take another job, you make those decisions that I'm going to take this job, but I'm taking this job on my terms. So if something's not working, I'm going to speak out about it. If something doesn't feel right, I'm going to say it, and I'm not going to worry about the results because I trust myself.
Well, we learn from those, right? From those mistakes. And I think even if you were to go into entrepreneurship, you're going to say the same thing, right? You're going to
Hmm.
say some of those. What do you say to someone who says, yeah, but I can't survive as self-employed. I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know how to take the bull by the horns or the rein, the horse by the reins. What do you say to that? Because I know that one of the gifts that you're going to be giving to everyone who's listening here is how to go from stuck to soaring, your personal breakthrough assessment. So is the assessment also looking at your finances and saying, hold, I can give myself this amount of time to figure it out? Or what is it? What is it that you do
Right.
for the person who says, yeah, but I need the money. Yeah, but I can't afford. Yeah, but
Yeah, what excuse me. What the assessment does is it looks at all different areas of your life and you figure out where you're strong and where you're weak. And as far
Mhm.
as the person who says, like, I don't know what to do, I need the money, I say to them, one, you're not alone. And then that's the most amazing thing. When I started my own company, I was a solopreneur and I really thought, okay, I'm on my own now. And I realized that unlike in the corporate world where there's so much competition because there's limited money, limited positions, you're competing. In this world, everyone is trying to help you. There's so much support. There's so many people that are willing to help you because, when we lift one person up, we lift everyone up. So there are ways to get help. And then the other thing is to trust yourself and be creative because if you really want to do something different, you'll find a way to do it. Whether, you're a Lyft or a DoorDash driver for a few months while you get your business, or you get a part-time consulting job or something. But if you really want to look at what's going to make you happy and figure out a way to make that work, because that's going to change your life. And it'll be hard. You might have to make some sacrifices in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to be so much better. You're going to be so much more fulfilled, and just believing that it's possible is a big
Yeah.
step.
Yeah, so I want everybody to hear this, because this is breaking through a glass ceiling. And whether it's another job on the top or something, entrepreneurial, or maybe not anything. Maybe it's like my purpose is to stay home and support my family, and being at home, or, my job is to take care of my elderly parents, or whatever the case may be. This is a ceiling, that you're breaking through. And what you're saying is, and so what I'd like to hear is, as you were breaking through that ceiling, because you're proposing what it's going to be, it might be hard, you might have to make some sacrifices, etc. What did you experience? Where did you get cut going through the ceiling, and it hurt a
Yeah,
little bit?
it was definitely hard. Luckily, at the time I got fired, my car lease expired the month later. And, my husband and I decided, well, we could share a car for now. We'll figure it out. And actually, we only have one car and it works out really well between we're never both needed, rarely both needed at the same time. So that was a sacrifice. I gave up my BMW and now we share an older Chrysler. Yeah, it's not
I
that
love
bad.
Chrysler. We're Chrysler people. I love
Yay.
Chrysler.
So, and then, I was creative. I knew someone who owned their own company and had been asking me to come and help him for years. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I have some time now. Are you still interested? And I got, a part-time consulting job, and that paid my mortgage every month while I grew my business. So there are ways to be creative, and it's really about believing it's going to happen. And now, even now, some months are great and other months I'm like, okay, where's that last $100 going to come from? Because I'm not quite there yet. I've only been doing it for 2 years. I have great months and I have so months, and I'm hoping to get it more consistent. Yet I'm so much happier than I ever was before. And I wake up without an alarm every morning, and I'm just doing what I love. And that's worth any sacrifice, because I
Yeah.
didn't have that before.
Yeah, yeah. And oh man, I know that feeling, right? Because I experience that every day, waking up. It is funny. I have rarely set my alarm unless I'm flying. someplace.
I'm the same way.
Or have an early morning meeting, because I don't do those anymore. Right. And it's amazing how you still wake up early, but it's on your terms, and it's just so much peace, and it's not the hustle of getting out and, and all of that stuff. And I really love that. So, I know in your coaching that you combine this practicality, right? I always call it the mechanics and the mindset, right? Because that's where the momentum comes. That's one of my favorite sayings that I use is mindset plus mechanics equals momentum. So you combine this practicality with these, as you say, these actionable insights and deep mindset training. Tell us how that works. How does practicality work with that? Is it just, that we have to do it every day and we have to put it in our calendar? Is that the practicality of it? Or give us some insight into how you combine these two in your coaching.
Yeah, it's very interesting because as an engineer, I know like if 5 years ago someone had told me, okay, we're going to do some, we're going to do an energy release and we're going to lock your goal in the future, I would have looked at them and said, what are you, crazy? Like, that's not going to work.
Right.
And it's really interesting because now that I'm teaching a lot of the so-called woo work, I can actually relate it back to the practical engineering steps. I mean, I when I have clients, I set up a spreadsheet for them. It's really,
Right.
so it's a matter of scheduling things and realizing that the two are connected, that you can't really, that your logical brain can only take you so far.
Yeah.
And that so much of what happens in our life is controlled by our subconscious mind. And if we just let that off on its own, we're never going to get where we want to go. And the thing that's fascinating is I know if I knew what I knew today, like 10 years in my career, I can just think of decisions I made that I would make differently, jobs I didn't apply to because I felt like, oh, maybe I'm not qualified for, or things I did do because I was afraid to say no. And it probably would have changed my, my trajectory in corporate world. I might still be there. I might be a CEO or something because it would have changed how I thought about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I hear you, through every part of this. And I'm sure someone listening is, knows this same process, understood this same thing. What if, and then I want to go to a different kind of a little bit about your TED Talk. What if somebody is at their job, they're not at a crossroads, right? They're not unhappy. Their company hasn't left them. They don't want to leave their company, and they're hearing you and they're saying, is there more? Is there more than this 9 to 5 and the hustle and this, that, and the other? What can they be doing to inject some mindset? Or maybe they already have it and they need some more practical experience, to create a new reality for them, because that's what you're talking about is, reinvention of your mindset. What can they do within the confines of I shouldn't say that, in the job they love,
Yeah.
to make it that they love it more?
You can always love it more. And that's, there's always more. No matter where you are, there's always more. And, I have an exercise that I love to do with people who are working. It's a really simple exercise and it's called 100 Things I Tolerate. And you just take a piece of paper and you write down things that you tolerate, that you don't really love, that you let people do with them. And then you kind of go through them, rank them in order and decide you're going to change them. And it changes your life when you realize like, okay, I'm tolerating this. Like, why am I tolerating this? I don't have to. And sometimes it's so simple, like you're tolerating something, and if you ask someone, hey, can we change this? They'd be like, sure, I don't, but we tolerate it and they build up. So it's something people can do. Because I think, knowing what you're allowing to happen that's not serving you, and stopping that, whether it's setting better boundaries at work. You may love your job, and I loved my job, and for the longest time, I loved my job, yet I know I worked longer hours than I had to, and I did things that were not in my job description that really, I wanted to be successful, so I kept working harder and harder. And some of my coworkers, particularly the men, didn't do that, and yet they were the same place as I was. So why are you working twice as hard for no reason? And that's, you have to say no. You have to take that on yourself and say, hey, I don't need to do all these things. I'm tolerating this and I don't have to. And that kind of can actually bring you a higher spot in your job because suddenly you learn to delegate or you learn to stand up for yourself. And that's really what leadership is about. It's, being a kind but a good leader where you're willing to take a stand for something.
Yeah. Well, and it's being a leader for yourself, right? Being your own
Mm-hmm.
leader. Yeah, I'm glad that you said, because you were saying tolerate, and I'm thinking boundaries, boundaries, and then you finally came in with boundaries, which is something I do. It's part of an assessment that I have for my clients too. Is what are those core values? So we'll break this down for those that are listening. Is like, what are these core values? And if they are values, because really values are principles, non-negotiable principles that you live
Mm-hmm.
by. And so if family is a core value, then why are you working till 7 o'clock at night and then driving 2 hours and then getting home and being mean and grumpy to them and not spending any time with them, maybe even going into your office and doing more work?
Exactly.
Right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what you're tolerating. That's what needs to go.
Right. Yeah. And it's not serving us. I mean, we don't need to do that.
It's not serving anybody.
No. And I think when we do that type of stuff, we allow people, I think that part of clearly the glass ceiling, whether it's for women, for anyone, the glass ceiling is there, but the more we allow it to be there, there's no incentive to get rid of it. So, yeah, it would be great if someone breaks it from the top, but breaking it from the bottom is by what you stand for and your boundaries and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're willing to claim for yourself, because we have so much more power than we think we do.
Yeah. And I think so often, especially, since I know you work with women, so often for women, and I would say even now in today's world for men, because my husband talks about it. He's a bald white guy in his 50s, right? Well, he's not, he's in his 60s, but he's like the opposite of, any trend that we're protecting, right? And he's now doing what I used to do, and I sometimes talk about this is, I don't break through the glass ceiling. I'm tapping on it. I'm like, ooh, 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 is it going to hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, am I being too much of a disruptor? Ooh, I don't know, right? So we tend to tap. So we're like tap, 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 and we're cracking it, but it's not breaking through. And I think that he even does that now because he's so afraid that if he says something wrong or does something wrong, that somebody's going to get angry, right? And so I think we're all just a little afraid to break through. We're more about that tapping. So give us some insight that changes that says, okay, I'm not tolerating this and I want to break through, but I'm a little apprehensive about how to do it. Where am I going to find the power from within to do that?
Right. Yeah. And it's really about facing the fear and knowing that, whatever the worst thing that could happen, we can handle it. You can handle it. And I love the quote. There's a book called Hello Fears by Michelle Poler. It's one of my favorite books. And she has a quote in it where she's talking about when she was giving a TEDx talk, she was super nervous and they kept telling her, oh, well, what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? And she kept thinking of all these horrible things that could happen. And then when she turned it around and she said, what's the best that could happen? It was completely freeing. And unless you do get that hammer and hammer there, you're not giving yourself that opportunity for the best that could happen. You're always kind of afraid to, take that risk. And just knowing, I believe everyone can handle whatever is thrown at them. We're not going to get something thrown at us that we can't deal with. The world's not like that. So taking that risk and claiming your power and standing for what you believe in, even if there is risk, will just be so much more freeing and will let us, break through that glass ceiling or make the big jump or truly change our life and live our purpose.
Yeah. And help us breathe. I mean, breath I just ran into somebody who just wrote a book about breath, a doctor. And it's, I thought, oh my gosh, why is she writing this big, thick book? I mean, why not just a book that says, just breathe? Right. But I mean, she's done so much research on breathing. And I think when we find ourselves in this chaos, right? Because, creativity follows chaos. So if you're in chaos, it's coming. The creativity is coming, right? But we do have to remember to breathe, because when we're in this chaos, when we're in the hustle, we have doubts and things aren't in alignment, we're not breathing, and I love that you're saying that, because that's where success lies. And a lot of times in this book that you were saying, Hello, Fear, it's kind of like the Pixar movie Inside Out, right? We have fear and joy and anger and all those pieces. And I love that you said, that, because a lot of times we are afraid of success. And I love that you're saying, now let's look at what would be the worst thing that could happen? What would be the best thing that could happen to us? Really looking and painting that picture for us in the future. I absolutely love that. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the gift that you have for everybody, what we can expect from this assessment of From Stuck to Soaring, your personal breakthrough assessment.
Yes, what it is it's a quiz, and it looks at different areas of your life, from relationships, money, business, spiritual, health and fitness. And it asks you questions to rank yourself. And it'll tell you, you rank yourself on, I think it's from a 1 to 5. And you can see where am I doing really well and where do I need a little help? And after you take the assessment, you'll actually be invited to schedule a call where we can review your results and kind of see what should be the next step for you. Where, is there something you should be working on, or is there a pattern where you're the same way, in all these areas of life? So we kind of go through and say what might help you, what, congratulations, you're really strong here. However, this area needs a little help. So it's a great tool because you can use it now. And then if you do some type of a personal growth or a coaching program, or even attend, an event, you can take it again and see how you've changed. So you can kind of see, oh, I've improved my life. I've gotten better in this area. And so then you can celebrate that.
Yeah. So it's sort of what's next. What's next for me? And, I think that's really incredible. I love that piece of it, and that's the thing with assessments. And I've learned that, over the years too, even with disc profile, I was one person long time ago, and I'm definitely not that person now. Right.
Yes.
I am definitely not that person. So I love that it's a gift that keeps giving for each season or level that we, ascend into. I love that part of it. So Lori, what do you want to leave for us, for those that are listening and they're saying, okay, I heard you, I'm going to take the assessment, I'm going to figure things out. I might, come and have that phone call with you and, see what happens next. But, I'm still not where I need to be. Give us some words of encouragement, a quote, your thoughts, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it was a quote from someone, but I've seen it a lot of times. Everything, like right now, wherever you are, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. There's a reason you're there, and there's a lesson in that. However, that doesn't mean you're going to still be there 5 minutes from now, or 10 minutes from now, or tomorrow. So don't beat yourself up on what's not working, but know that you have everything you need to truly create the life you desire and the reality you desire. We really have everything we need inside of us, or we know how to get it. And, when you know that, it just makes so much more possible, because you're seeing that there is something there for you, and you're willing to believe in it. And then once you believe it, you can find it. So the belief is the first part, knowing you have everything you need and that you can access it and get the life you really want. Because I think the world is a joyful place, and we're all meant to live in fun and joy and fulfillment. I mean, that's how it should be for everyone, and it's possible for everyone.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. And especially in these times, there are a lot of people that are leaving traditional jobs. And this podcast is not about being an entrepreneur only. It's just that, this particular episode is, and there are a lot of people that are leaving corporate world, these days. And more people are becoming consultants and entrepreneurs and business owners. And jump on this bandwagon now. This is, if it's presenting itself, this might be exactly, as you put it, right now, wherever you are, you're supposed to be. Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful, Lori. Thank you so much for spending time with us today and really helping us combine these two worlds to be able to create a lot of momentum in our lives. Very, very much appreciated. I love what you're doing for the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Lady Jen.
Of course, my pleasure. Well, again, thank you so much for listening in on the show, and head on over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel for Success to Significance, Life After Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. And if you have a quick moment and you were inspired by what Lori had to say, take a second to scroll down, give us a great 5-star rating, and write something in the review section that you learned from Lori so that we can share that with her as well. And with that, we thank you again for taking time today and look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Success to Significance with Jen Duplessis, the #1 podcast for people wanting to give more value and make an impact. Loved this episode? Be sure to subscribe right now at www.jenduplessis.com/S2S for more stories, strategies, and thoughts to help you gain significance and success. And if you like what we're doing, don't forget to give us a rating and review so we can continue to bring you the best content possible. Join us next week for another breakthrough episode. Thank you for listening.